Next phase is 50s. This is where you find your stride. And in this place, you get unstuck from the mud. And as you enter your 50s, I'm already starting to feel the stride, like the mud is drying up and I'm getting my footing on some dry ground. I have some questions for God on why in a decade of struggle, that struggle's already built in, us in our 40s also had to endure COVID on top of that. That seems disproportionately wrong, but I guess it is what it is, right? Not meant to be dismissive, but like that made me feel like extra stuck. And now the ground is drying up. I'm 45, but I can see the next turn. And that's when you hit your stride. And the unconscious question is, am I over the hill? And the answer is no, you're not. You're just getting started, and you're hitting that rhythm that you've been wanting to hit. You've done a lot of hard work for the last 49 years to figure out what does and doesn't work, and now you're moving. Now you're moving, and you're feeling the momentum of all of the investment. You might start feeling a little bit old physically. I've talked to people in their 50s and over the years, and there's this key phrase, you just wait until you're this age. So you're starting to feel it. But Solomon, who's accounted as to be the wisest man that ever lived, wrote the vast majority of his Psalms, or the Proverbs that he wrote, during his 50s. He's feeling a stride. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Those types of things that the Proverbs teach us. So, most admit to feeling old. You start paying attention to your health. You pay attention to your mortality. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16, Paul says this, therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man, everybody say inward man. The inward man is being renewed day by day. So we know from New Testament survey, which I paid special attention to in Bible school, that Paul was 50 in his early 50s when he wrote his second book to the Corinthians. So when he writes this, he's in his early 50s finding his stride. And here's what he's saying. I know what it feels like to get old on the outside. The outside's getting older, but there's something about the inside that's being renewed day after day. The outside man is feeling it, but the inside man is just getting started, he's saying. Like, I'm renewed every day. It's getting better, it's getting better, it's getting better. Isaiah pens his beautiful statements and thoughts about giving strength to the weary and increasing the power to the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary. The humble men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. So in your 50s, this is what I want to ask you to do. This is the phase of life that you're in. I want you to make a milestones list. Between now, Christmas, Thanksgiving would be a perfect time to do it. What's a milestones list? Milestones is a listing of all the things that you've done and you think you got it right. Write that list. Make a list. Someone says, that's not a very long list. No, I think if you were to sit down and think through it, starting at the very beginning, you'll be so encouraged. You're like, oh, I did that right, and I did this right. And it'll be that strength that Isaiah talks to you about. It will strengthen the inner man because you're about halfway through. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but you're about halfway through, and you have this list of items. Got healthy kids, got a great spouse, bought a beautiful home, paid that home off. Whatever the list is that I did this right, make that list. In your 50s is the perfect time to establish or reestablish what Bob calls the North Star. The North Star. I'm going to tell you how to define that. And I think your 50s is a perfect time to do that or to redefine it. 5 simple things, 5 simple questions in your 50s, in this phase of life. Who is God? Who is God? This is probably the most important question that you'll ask yourself today or ever. Because however you answer this question will determine how you answer all the other questions in life. Who's God? Number two, why am I on the earth? In your 50s, when you're hitting that stride, you have flexibility, you have some clarity of thought, you've seen some things. Why am I on the earth? What's my purpose? Number 3, what difference do I want to make before I leave this life? This is about vision and dream. Number 4, how am I going to go about making this difference? That's your life work. And number 5, how long do I want this difference to last? This is your legacy. In your 50s, in this phase of life, you're in a perfect position to ask yourself these questions and come up with some sustainable and substantial answers to give you direction for the second half of the life that God has given you. Who is God? Such a powerful question. I was at lunch with someone talking about faith, my faith, not too long ago, and their belief system and my belief system are different. So we were having a chat about my faith system, about how I believe, my belief system. And before I move past that, I think it's important that each and every one of us have conversations and go to lunch and have coffee with people who have different belief systems than we do. Not to dominate or domineer or be opinionated, but to have healthy discussions. I think that's meaningful, to not be so insecure that you get upset and annoyed until everyone around you believes like you believe. That's just a manifestation of insecurity, to force people to believe what you believe. My belief system is strong enough to hold up against lots of scrutiny. And if you don't believe like I believe, that's okay. I'm not going to fall apart, and I'm not going to get mad at you because you don't agree with me. That's just healthy. And so we were having this discussion, and who is God? Why is your faith important? That's an interesting question. And my answer is one of many things that my faith does. But the thing I found myself speaking about that day was my faith gives me a North Star. It gives me a foundation. It gives me firm footing. When everything around me is chaos, subjective, thrown about by changing winds and fads, I have a word that's eternal, that stands the test of time. Heaven and earth will pass away, but this word lasts forever. And so I don't have to guess. I don't have to be the judge and jury. I don't have to be the judge of morality. All I need to do is go to the great designer, ask him how he defines it, and endeavor to let my belief system rest on what he said is the truth. And so when the world is crazy and kids are running all over, and when ground is shaky, that's the worst time to be trying to find a foundation. The foundation has to already be set. Houses that crumble not because of the strength of the storm necessarily, but because of the weakness of the foundation. You can put a lot on a house with a strong foundation. You could have a big house with a weak foundation and it'll fall apart. That's what God does for me. That's what His Word does. It gives me a stable, steady, firm foundation to build my life on. Who is God? To me, He's best depicted in the gospel and the story of what we call the prodigal son. The son has wasted all of his dad's inheritance and he's doing stuff he's not supposed to do. And he ends up having a change of heart and comes running home to God. Come home. It's a picture of us coming home to God, but he comes home to his father. It's a son coming back to his dad. There's something that just struck me recently about that text. If you look closely, you'll see that the father saw the son afar off. And I got to thinking, He didn't get a text message from his son saying, I'm on my way home. I don't think he got a telegram or any kind of advance notice. I can't prove it. This is just my impression. That the father, every day since that boy left, pulled up a chair and looked down the lane, waiting for that boy to come back. He had tons of stuff to do, businesses to run, responsibilities to take care of. But there was one thing on that dad's heart, and it was his son that was far away and lost. Didn't know if he was alive or dead. And I just have this picture of this dad doing all he could do, but at some point he just had to rest and look down that lane and say, man, I hope today's the day he comes back. I hope today's the day he comes back. I don't know how many days he did that. But here's what I know. One day he set that chair up on that porch and looked down that lane, and that was the day he came back. And that dad threw a party, killed a calf, and they ate great. They had a big to-do, singing and dancing. That's partly why I think that church is supposed to be enjoyed in a celebration, not an endurance and memorial. Because we're spending time with our Heavenly Father. And that son came home, and they throw a massive party. And that's how I see God. He's looking. He's waiting. I think there's people in this room that God's been looking and waiting for you to say, I'm going to come back home. You know what it means to follow God. But you've been doing your own thing. And listen, I don't think you should be afraid to come back home. I think you should have a picture of God, that the God of the Bible is one who celebrates. He's not waiting on you to give you the what for in a 14-hour lecture on all the ways you got it wrong. He hugged that boy's neck. I don't know what that dad did, but I can only imagine what I would do for one of my kids. I'd probably just tackle him in the driveway, roll around in the dirt, kiss him on the face, hit him in the arm, like probably hit him in the face. Because I just couldn't control myself. I'm just so happy that he came back. Not to hurt him, but you know what I'm saying? Like, just love on that kid. Let's go have some brisket. You know what I mean? Like, let's do it. Not, do you know we've been worried sick over you? How dare you put your mother through that? No. That can be addressed later. You can grow after. See, you don't have to do it all right. All you need to do is come up the lane and come to the Father who's got his arms wide open, ready to hug you and cover you with joy and peace and love and strength and do for you what you couldn't do for yourself. That's how I see God. Because I think that's what the Bible teaches us about who God is. All of his judgment and wrath was satisfied in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Jesus took it for us so that we did not have to carry it ourselves.